Can the European Union be compatible with a union of nation-states? Is there a way of accommodating opposing forces, voting systems, structural reorganisation, multi-tiered and multi-speeds? Is the tension between Brussels and its members something we just have to accept? Maybe it just comes down to centrifugal forces acting in nature and politics. Join me, Jan Darasz, for How We Got Here.
Founded in 1933, the European Union has since brought together 27 member states and has opened its doors to more prospective members. Its founders, however, had diverse visions for the future of Europe. On one hand, the Christian Democrats, or the EPP Group, envisioned a Europe of Homelands, where the post-war order would be built upon the principles of an economic community, preserving the sovereignty and unique identities of each nation. On the other hand, federalists aspired to a more integrated Europe akin to the United States, with stronger central institutions and a more unified political structure. But despite functioning as a union of progress, the path to a more integrated Europe is not without its hurdles. At the core of these challenges lies the controversial use of the veto.
Vote is closed.
This powerful tool, wielded by member states, has the capacity to halt EU-wide decisions. In a direct counteraction, Poland and Hungary responded by actively campaigning to preserve the unanimity rule within the EU's foreign and security policy framework. Just last year, 9 EU countries joined forces to reform the bloc's voting rules, but they still do not constitute a qualified majority, despite the support of the bloc's largest and most influential economies, Germany and France.
Poland will never support the idea of moving away from the unanimity to qualified majority voting. #QMV in the common foreign and security policy. Hungary can only do so until the EU is unable to decide on other mechanisms. For example, whether the EU should use qualified majority and not allow the whole EU to become the hostage of a single country.
Beyond the veto, other EU laws have stirred the pot of controversy. For example, since 2015, EU states have been working on a pact on asylum and migration, a topic that has sparked heated debate across the bloc. Hundreds of thousands of illegal immigrants arrive to the EU each year. 4 members bear the brunt of the crisis. Nearly 60% of all migrants arrive exactly here. Provisions of the pact include speeding up asylum processes, enhancing returns, and fostering shared responsibility among member states. But finding the balance between solidarity and responsibility hasn't been easy. Even a recent compromise reached in the European Parliament was considered insufficient by observers.
Nothing will be improved and things will be worsened. Human rights will be restricted. People will be brought into even more danger.
Amidst these struggles, there's a movement to strengthen Brussels itself as a hub of competence. As a result, the city, which serves as the de facto capital of the EU, has increasingly become recognized as a center of expertise and innovation.
I'm delighted to welcome our guest today, Dr. Jolanta Szymańska. She is the head of the European Union programme at the Polish Institute of International Affairs. Welcome to our programme.
Hello, thank you for having me.
Great pleasure to have you. Let's start off. Our discussion is going to explore the theme of the relationship between the state, nation states, and the centre in the European Union. So Brussels and the nations around it. How would you characterise the relationship between the central EU authority, Brussels, and its member states today?
Well, this is always a big question about European integration, and it has changed in the meantime, the model of integration. I would say that there are still member states who shape the union institutions, so they are somehow the owners of the center also. They elect institutions, and I mean top jobs. So
France and Germany?
not only France and Germany. I mean, every political party after this European election that we will have soon in June will take part in this game, you know. So the final result is a kind of strange connection between democratic factor that we have during elections, because result of elections, it's a sign in which direction the European Union should follow. So leaders of member states decide on the basis of European elections who should be the next president of the European Commission, and this commission must be accepted also by the parliament. So it's I mean, the model of union is kind of a mixture of purely democratic factor that we know from member states, and kind of diplomatic body also, because it's less transparent than institutions of particular member states. But yeah, European Union is changing, always changing. It's an international organization, but we are still considering if it should become more and more integrated, I mean, in a sense of becoming more like a federal state, or maybe we should stay rather with stronger member states, so more intergovernmental model. So now we have we are in the middle. We have strong international factor with strong member states. When they want to change the reality in the European Union, they can easily do it, especially in a crisis situation. I mean, all the crises actually show that member states are the owners of union. But of course, institutions are also strong, and they, especially European Commission, they initiate all the legislation, they also control member states if they follow, I mean, their own decisions and implement them. So it's a very important role of European Commission in this structure. So I would say it's a mixture, and we are all wondering all the time how to really, what do we actually want the European Union to be in the future?
The driving ideology of the EU is that it's an ever closer union. So how is that compatible with these, as you say, these strong nation states who take control of their destiny in crises? Is that where the European model, EU model, fails, when it has to deal quickly with a crisis and then the nation state seems to take over?
Yeah, but crises also make union usually stronger. I mean, it pushes union to integrate more. Yeah. And it's not, it doesn't mean necessarily that stronger member states means step back in the integration process. The example of pandemic, for example, and the reaction on the full-scale invasion of Russia on Ukraine actually showed that, okay, member states want to be the owners and decision makers, but still they make decisions that are in favor of further integration. So it's not so obvious. I mean, sometimes, of course, member states criticize the concept of ever closer union. The British did, and they finally decided to exit from the union. It's always possible. So it's, you know, ever-closing union is like a very
too unclear
concept that we don't really know where we are heading. I mean, it doesn't necessarily mean that we need to be a state at the end. I think there is no concession and no agreement between member states to have like a really federal union. That's why we have like moments of stronger integration. Usually we integrate more during crisis. Then when it's better a little bit. Member states criticize the union because they always try to have like more say on what is going on, especially internally in their political life in the countries. And sometimes the voices coming from Brussels criticizing governments sometimes annoys politicians. So it's a complicated hybrid structure. Yeah. But I think that the general direction is that we are rather trying to integrate more, because I mean the challenges that are facing Union and Europe are usually really big, and we need to integrate to react, I mean, together, because together we are simply stronger.
Well, that begs the question, how do you integrate? Deeper, or do you integrate further? How are the models of the European integration actually evolving, given the fact of enlarged membership, the possibility of Georgia, for example, wanting to join? How is Brussels going to manage this huge geographic area?
I think that I follow this discussion between member states about enlargement, because enlargement is currently the main factor influencing the discussion about the model of integration. So there are countries, of course, arguing that we need only enlargement without institutional reforms, without deepening integration. But there are many, mainly Western European countries, arguing that with like 35 members, we need to reform at least the decision-making process, reducing possibility to use veto right. I mean, currently, we don't have so many opportunities when countries can use veto rights, only in very sensitive policy areas like foreign policy. But still, for example, when we want to make decision about sanctions, like we had actually this problem after the invasion, and we had Hungary blocking decision-making process, it was always difficult, and countries were forced to make concessions and exceptions from the sanctions regime. So many countries argue that it's not acceptable, that we should be faster in making the decision and implementing also decisions. So currently, I mean, there is ongoing discussions if we should stay with Lisbon Treaty and decision-making process like it is now, or we should change the treaty, or even if we don't change the treaty under Lisbon, so current treaty, it's possible to change decision-making process in some more sensitive areas, but to make it, all the countries need to agree. So we need this unanimity to change the voting system. In this is a kind of paradox, because it's always difficult to find area where everybody really agrees.
Especially on fundamental issues like
this works better when union is somehow pushed by crisis. I mean, in the normal circumstances, decision-making process is like lower, and countries are always trying to find an excuse for not making some steps. I mean, in the process of further integration. So it's complicated, but it's a very political issue, and I think this debate after current elections under this new institutional cycle. So from the autumn 2004 should be more dynamic than now, because now we are just waiting for new government of the European Union. I mean the Commission and other institutions.
Could you outline the idea of the concentric nature the European model of expansion? We talked about this earlier, that it was a French-German model. Does that have any power in it?
Well,
it's multi-speed Europe.
Yeah, I mean, many argue, and actually it's true, that we already have multi-speed Europe, like with Schengen system, with Eurozone, and so on and so on. But with many more countries as members, we would probably have more circles. So this multi-speed will go farther a little bit. But in a Franco-German report that was actually published last September, they think that we don't need to enlarge really. We can make core of the union inside. So in a core, they think that there are countries who are members of the Eurozone and Schengen zone, so everything what is enhanced somehow. The second circle would be just the union, so the current shape of the union, everybody in the current shape would stay in a second circle. The third would be for candidate states that they expect the process may take long time. So let's integrate somehow by giving, for example, greater access to the market, to internal market for candidate states. This is actually something what also Commission would like to see. And the fourth, the last one, would be based rather on security issues with members such as Great Britain, not interested in being really part of this political community, but cooperating closely in the area of security, like other Eastern countries around the European Union. So it would be more like geopolitical community of states. I mean, to some extent, of course, we already see some symptoms of this kind of cooperation because under Macron's initiative, member states created something what is called European Political Community, based on a priority of security. So this European political community is, to some extent, this one of the circles of this multi-speed union. Yeah. So, but frankly speaking, I think that the crucial element is to allow for enlargement, not to close union. Because if we think about multi-speed in this sense as an alternative for enlargement, for full membership, I don't think it's a good idea. I think that every country should have the right to decide if the country wants to take this challenge and prepare itself to be a full member and really benefit from all the elements, not only from the market, but also from common security policy, common foreign policy, migration policy. Of course, they are always sensitive, but still, I want to stress again that together we can do better. So,
a final question, very short question. Are there any historical precedents for this kind of, for want of a better word, empire building? Or is this a unique experiment politically?
Well, European Union is unique. I mean, in at least modern history, it's a unique hybrid organization, and with really some elements of purely democratic institutions like European Parliament. It's only one parliament which is not the nation-based parliament. So we have like elements of pure democracy known from the state with very very typical elements of international relations and international organizations, like, negotiations in the Council, the institutions like European Council. They are symptoms or intergovernmental democracy. But together with institutions such as Parliament, they make a hybrid structure which is very unique, and I think it's difficult to imagine that it can be repeated somehow in other places in the world.
Okay, well, unfortunately we have to draw our discussion to a close, but Dr. Szymańska, thank you very much for coming on to our programme.
Thank you very much for having me again, and thank you for the invitation.
It's a great pleasure. And that's all we have time for today, so join us next time for How We Got Here.